Hey y'all, today, I'll be using text-to-speech to better communicate with all of you. So without further ado, let's begin. For those unaware, Election Year Knockout is a game developed by the indie company Exceptional Games. It's a US politics satire game released in early 2020 for that year's election season in America. It was inspired by Nintendo's Punch-Out, and thus follows the same boxing puzzle hybrid style the latter is known for. Especially since it's a political satire game, with jokes thrown basically everywhere, it isn't meant to be taken seriously, also like Punch-Out. Anyway, here, you fight parodies of US politicians, and it's made clear from the start they are not playing fair against you. That is exacerbated by the fact that this game's setting is in a dystopian reality in which all laws were replaced by boxing in a questionable attempt to prevent an imminent social collapse. It is also stated that, in this scenario, there are no rules in boxing, a decision which was also taken via boxing match, so it is expected people will be taking some extreme measures to win. Before, I brought over to Election Year Knockout, a prominent question in the Punch-Out community from a while back, which was whether or not Punch-Out was beatable without dodging or blocking. Today, I'll do the same for another Punch-Out question, made and answered by Bumbles McFumbles, whose videos on the matter shook the Punch-Out community to its core, affecting conversations about the games and entire wikis. And it won't be from scratch this time. With the help of Bumbles videos, the Election Year Knockout Wiki, this video, everything in the description by the way, your comments and my own research, we shall answer. I mean, you know from the title already but still. Taking into account the rules established by the Association of Boxing Commissions and Combative Sports, which Election Year Knockout boxer is the biggest cheater. As a bonus, we'll see if any of them surpasses the current Punch-Out champion on that matter, established by Bumbles and Fumbles in these two videos, which you should really check out if you haven't yet. So roll the intro. Okay, so, before we get into any actual fighters, let me make a few general things clear from the get-go. First, about boxing licenses and weigh-ins. In-game, there's absolutely nothing that points out to a fighter's nationality, age, height, and weight, and that would pretty much mean everybody would automatically get 2 infractions for this. One for the lack of a boxing license, and the other for not showing up for weigh-in. Except no. In the game's beta, most fighters had all that info and, even after the game's launch, future DLC opponents were also given them by the devs in a document outside of the actual game. So we'll go off of those throughout the video. Another thing is how this game's fights aren't arranged into circuits, like Punch-Outs are. And so, any rules that involve circuits, such as shirts not being allowed in World Circuit fights, or tapes on body only being allowed in minor circuit fights, won't be taken into consideration here. Something else is how there's a difference in the rules between intent to cheat and actually cheating. For example, quite a few fighters here bring weapons into the ring, and by the just mentioned logic, these cases get 1 infraction for bringing the weapon, and another for using it. The wiki will often mark an infraction for bringing a weapon, another one for using it, and a third one for the actually cheating part. I'll be following what Bumbles did, and you can see it for yourself on the Aaron Ryan section from the first video where he talks about his horseshoe-loaded gloves, and mark only 2 infractions in these cases, save for some exceptions that may happen in each, but we'll cross those bridges when we get to them. Lastly, for the sake of saving time, I won't dive into much detail about the rules and infractions as we go through them. For the full picture, check out Bumbles' videos as there he explains them thoroughly. Let's begin with the player character. In this game, the character you control is customizable. You can change between 12 different heads, 6 male and 6 female, and change skin, hair, and outfit colors. For the sake of simplicity, I'll be combining all the customizable options under the player character name. The wiki mentions how the player is the only character not to have any rule infractions, but that couldn't be further from the truth. For starters, remember what I said earlier about how most fighters had data such as age, weight, height, and nationality? Yup, the player's the exception, as they have none of that. As such, it probably means the player's got no US sanctioned boxing license, nor has shown up for weigh-in. That's 2 infractions right there. Plus, without knowing their age, we don't even know if they have the minimum age required for professional boxing, which is 18. For the sake of the video, let's assume the fights can happen. But wait, there's more. The beardly player head has, well, a beard, and I'd say it's ever so slightly too thick, and it may act as a cushion for the jaw. The most you can have is well-groomed facial hair. Otherwise, it must be shaved. That's 1 infraction. Oh, and, by the way, having just a mustache is okay. The K-pop chick player head wears earrings. You can't have any piercings in fights, so those are illegal. That's 1 more infraction for the use of piercings. The esports ME player head wears headphones. That's an outside electronic, which you can't have, while also acting as head covering. Also, the kitty streamer head wears cat ears, which is also an illegal outside object and head cover. That's 2 more infractions. But here's the big one. Maverick, the coach, advises the player not to play fair, as all the other politicians don't either. And so the player has items on them, which are as follows. The Mudslinger increases punch strength. The Hardy Constitution increases your maximum health. The Cup of Filibuster triples stamina amount. The Health Pack fully heals you in between rounds. Lastly, the Veto allows you to deny a TKO and get up one more time. Okay, so the first 3 increase the player's performance, so they're technically doping, and that's a big no-no. That's 3 infractions for the doping. Since it can be done mid-fight, besides doing it before the fight begins, that would also count as bringing foreign objects into the ring, so that would add 3 more infractions. The health pack acts as a first aid kit to heal the player in the corner, and you can't have that as only water, adrenaline solution, Avatine and thrombin are allowed in between rounds, so that's 1 more infraction for using it. I'm a bit unsure about the veto, as it's more of a TKO denial gesture rather than an usable item, but since it involves the player getting up after being considered down the final time, and so the fight would end in a TKO, they can't do that as the fight's over, so that's 1 more infraction. That makes it a whopping 14 infractions for the player character. Also, regarding men versus women fights, that's technically possible in exhibition matches if both sides give consent. Even though, in this case, it's pretty clear everyone gives consent, whether these count as official or exhibition matches is up for debate, but since the player's sex can be changed, we'll go in as if we had men fighting men and women fighting women to make things easier. Or we could have the male player fight the female opponents and vice versa to create some extra infractions. But come on, give me a break. After the disaster that was the player character, the first opponent up is Jab Bush, who fights you to prove his point that cereal is, indeed, a soup. Glass Joe wannabe, and perhaps even worse, with only a single attack to his name, literally, a jab. Well, actually, definitely worse, as, for starters, he's 67 years old, 27 years past 40, the most common age limit for professional boxing. And that totally won't be a common thing going forward. Infraction. Next is his attire. Collared shirts can't be worn in the ring. Also, his glasses are a no illegal accessory. As is his belt, even if it helps provide a clear line of demarcation between his trunks and his chest, which is required. There's also that huge B in the belt center. That is personal branding, which isn't allowed. Furthermore, I'm pretty sure those shoes are sneakers, not appropriate boxing shoes or boots. His last infraction is in his presidential fight, a harder rematch akin to Punch-Out's title defense fights. He wears a hat, which is an illegal head covering that can't be brought into the ring. Besides that, the hat gives him +1 Texas, and whatever that is supposed to mean is clearly making him stronger, which could be seen as doping. That sums up to a total of 7 infractions. Next is Uncle Joe, and he brings a few new infractions into the ring, said ring being inside an airplane mid-flight. Sure, I guess. The thing is, he thinks all laws were replaced by wrestling, not by boxing. And so most of his infractions revolve around that. Let's bring out the repeats first. Uncle Joe is 77 years old, and so he's 37 years past the date he should have retired from boxing, even worse than Jab being 27 years past. Next is his attire. He wears a leotard, which fails both to provide a clear demarcation line between his trunks and chest and to contrast, for the opponent to know where low blows would be. Also illegal are his wrestling boots, as they provide a better range of movement than boxing ones due to the way they're designed, as they are made for, well, wrestling, not boxing. On his presidential fight, he changes from his leotard into shorts, which would have been a plus, were they not skin tight, as boxing shorts must be loose, and were they not lacking a clear line of demarcation between the waistband and the shorts, as both are dark blue. Also, those sweatbands are unnecessary accessories, thus forbidden, and he gets 1 infraction for each. Now let's get into the brand new infractions. He has a few illegal moves. First is his tackle. That's illegal not only because he's not punching you, but also because it's a jump attack. He jumps around the ring a lot, but that is, by itself, not really illegal. Jump attacks are, however. He has a second version of it too, from his presidential match, which he bounces off the ropes to perform. Also in this second version is the fact he's clearly diving at you and, unless he can fly, which he can't, he'd land on his body, thus being considered knocked down. Still on the presidential match, He attempts one more attack while he's going down, and when fighters are knocked down, they can't throw any more punches. Infraction. Besides that, he also lands on his body if he hits you, so he'd be considered down as well. Uncle Joe has the sum of 11 infractions. Next is AO. She's lower on infractions compared to the others, including the fact she's within the required age for boxing. Here are they. She wears lipstick, which is an illegal face covering. She also taunts you, both during fights and during corner breaks, which is excessive and disrespectful, thus unsportsmanlike. Going into her presidential fight, we've got a few more things to get her on. First is that flower, which is an illegal accessory. It could be argued it is just a hair tie, but that is too big to be left aside. Next are those glasses. Illegal accessory. Oh yeah, she kicks you. Need I say more? That leaves AO, with a record-setting 5 infractions, for being the least so far. Following her, we have the Zodiac pugilist Ted Bruz. His infractions pretty much come down to his attire, and, well, something you're all familiar with. But first, getting the other ones out of the way. He's age 49, and so we're back to getting them because of age. At least it's not as bad as the previous ones who broke the rules, but fighting 9 years past when he should have stopped still is a no-no. Next is his clothing. First, he wears a turtleneck, and he can't do that. Also forbidden is that jacket. Then there's his suit pants. Such clothing cannot go any further than the knees for boxing, and yet his pants go far below them. Those shoes there, I'm willing to bet those are Oxford shoes, and not proper shoes for boxing. That belt's an illegal accessory, again, even if it marks a clear demarcation line for the waist. Same goes for his wristwatch, without the demarcation line part, of course. Now about his beard. I'm willing to bet it's well groomed, and so legal, since you can even see his jaw. But at the same time, I'm skeptical, so I'll be marking an infraction just in case. Now, for his attacks. He has a fish he slaps you with, so that's 2 infractions. 1 for bringing a foreign weapon, and 1 for using it. Well, technically it's double that, as he has his clone attack you with a second fish on his presidential fight. Wait, clone? Oh yeah, magic. So, as already stated by Bumbles McFumbles when covering Great Tiger's magic and EYKO Kadro's teleportation, magic isn't exactly in the rules, for obvious reasons, but it's still cheating. And so, I'll do as he did and mark an infraction for each magic shenanigan. Thus we have his Aries charge, which has him summon magic horns to, well, charge at you with. Not only that, but the charge in itself is a non-punching illegal maneuver. His Scorpion Sting attack, name which explains it all. His double Scorpion Sting attack in which he has his clone help him attack. His clone he summons to fight you. Lastly, whenever he gets up, he shrouds himself in fog, and while that may seem meaningless, there's just no way to know if he did something illegal while briefly covered by it, or if the fog itself can hinder his opponent in some way. So I'm marking an infraction. And so, Ted Bruz finished with, oh geez, 17 infractions. Another new record, this time for the most so far. Let's see if the next one's any better. Yeah, I spoke too soon. Captain Crenshaw is next, and, while I root for him in his following of cosplay, which is his new passion, he can't exactly take it with him into the ring, especially when it involves barging into the ring with a whole pirate ship. Well then, let's see what he's got for us infraction-wise. At least he's 35, so he's free on the age part. Getting the more straightforward ones out of the way, his pirate hat counts as a head covering, and the eye patch is a face covering. I will mark an infraction for his beard, as I'm also skeptical of it being groomed well enough, like with Bruz before him. He wears a pirate coat, and he can't do that. His neckwear is an illegal accessory. His belt is an illegal accessory as well, even if it provides a clear line. Yeah, we get that. Just know that every time I mention belts from now on, the clear line of demarcation part will be implicit. That metal belt buckle there would also be no good, but since it's part of the already illegal belt, I won't add a second infraction for it. He wears pants that not only go past his knees, which isn't allowed, but are tucked into his boots. Oh yeah, those are pirate boots. Nope. Next, for his presidential fight, he also bears a cape. He's not allowed to wear one. What if he trips on it or something? Phew! And that was all just his attire. He has more. First is his cannon. However, he's able to manipulate it in the ring is beyond me. But that's one more infraction for it being a foreign weapon. He even uses it as a shield for body blows. Also counting as bringing an illegal weapon are the cannonballs. Remember that, in boxing, intent to cheat and actually cheating are two different things. And so, he gets a third infraction, indeed, for firing the cannon. A quick side note is how I'm perplexed at how the player character can't not only withstand the cannonballs, but also deflect them by using the haymaker. The player's out of this world, I'm telling you. Crenshaw also wields a sword, and so that's two more infractions. One for bringing an illegal weapon, and one for using it. Once again, the difference between intent to cheat and actually cheating. Also, in his presidential fight, he has his ship fire cannonballs at you, and that's outside interference. Lastly, on his intro cutscene, he comes barging in with his ship and destroys a portion of the ring, and that's damaging venue property, something you obviously cannot do. By the ring's mat we can see it belongs to Exceptional Games, which are totally not the devs. And so, Captain Crenshaw ends his cheating run with 16 infractions, not even being the highest score so far. Bertie Sanders is who follows, and he brings some friends to fight with him, or rather for him. Stakes are high as the loser of this match has to pay the medical bills resulting from the campaign buses crashing into one another. Anyway, looking at his infractions, he is 78, the same age as Hoy Quarlow, even. You know the drill at this point. Attire-wise, I'm willing to let his shirt slide, as it's simple enough. He otherwise gets an infraction. For the hoodie, he wears in the presidential match. It is better suited for boxing training, not for matches. For the actual hood, as it counts as head covering. For the glasses. For the beak covering his nose. For the belt. For the slacks, he wears that go below his knees. For his dress shoes. Now for the big one. He has birds tag teaming with him, and that isn't allowed as only both fighters and the ref can be in the ring. I'm giving infractions equal to the maximum number of birds he uses at once, which is not 4, mind you, but a whopping 9, thanks to his multi-bird attack special he does on the non-presidential encounter. Lastly, one of his 2 attacks, only 2 attacks, as the birds do all the other heavy lifting, is a flying lunge. While I'm unsure of how he can fly, that's still illegal. Also, no animal cruelty here as the bird clearly gave consent. That's not something you'd see being said every day, but it's still true. Anyway, Bertie finishes his run with 18 infractions, but that's just because of the birds. Count the birds as 1 infraction for the broad umbrella of tag teaming, and he's only got 10. Next is Chief Warren, and coffee addiction is an understatement for her. As a side note, I've actually forgotten her part of the script for some reason. Let me review it real quick. Mike Pius is next, and he's guarding the entrance to the White House with a ton of infractions. He's 60 years old, 20 years past the age limit of 40. That robe is inappropriate clothing for boxing. Bonus negative points for those loose parts from which he can trip. Also inappropriate are those pants because, again, they go past his knees, added by the fact that, even though the pants/shorts used are supposed to be loose, not tight, those are a bit too loose. Not only do the pants not provide a clear line of demarcation for the waist, but the robe is making it worse too by covering the waist even further. Those Oxfords are also a no-no, and in place there should be boxing shoes or boxing boots. The wiki calls his gloves out for being too big, but I'm willing to let that one slide because it's pretty debatable whether they are too big or not. I myself don't think they are. Besides, we never see him without his gloves to compare sizes with his hands, unlike a certain someone else. Anyway, like Ted Bruz, he also uses magic, and I'd argue it's on an even bigger scale. Once again, like I did with Bruz, I'll be marking 1 infraction for unique magic shenanigan. 1 for the floating, the huge magic glove, the laser, the small shield, the big shield, and the healing. Lastly, there's that big T on his robe, which, while not personal branding, it's still branding, which is illegal. That T is for thump, the next one we're gonna be looking at. In the end, Mike Pius ends his run with 11 infractions. Not bad compared to some others, but still not good. Donald Thump, the game's final boss, and the one you fight for the crown. Infraction-wise, we indeed have some things to mark. Say it with me, everybody. He is 73, and so, he's too old. Next is his clothing. He's mostly fine, but we do have to mark an infraction for that belt over there, and, this time, also for the buckle, as that is too big for me to let it slide. Big enough to shield his belly, even, counting as body armor. Also not good is the personal branding in his presidential fight gloves, which is even worse this time because those T are made of gold, or at least of gold-colored metal, and he's hitting you with them since they're at the front of the gloves. This also implies he brought those from home. Speaking of the gloves, now I have to agree that they're too big, especially since, during his KO animation, the gloves fly off, not only revealing his baby hands, confirming the gloves were too big, but also showing his fists were not wrapped properly, and so the ref had not inspected the gloves. Therefore, he brought both gloves from home and did not have them inspected, and so that's 4 more penalties. The wiki blames his hair for being too big and, while I have to disagree with that, instead, it is implied in the game that this thing isn't even his real hair, instead a wig, and so that'd be an infraction for head covering. Now for his attacks. His Stormy Smash is an illegal ear-clapping move. The wiki blames his Stormy Jackhammer for being an illegal rapid attack, but man, I swear I looked everywhere and didn't find a single mention of rapid attacks being a no-no, so I'll let it slide. If any of y'all happen to find something else about this, let me know down below in the comments. He also has 2 attacks for which he picks up Jab Bush and uses him as a weapon? Without questioning it that much, I'll just mark 2 infractions for bringing and using a foreign weapon. Now for some miscellaneous. Whenever he knocks you down, or just before the non-presidential fight starts, he pulls out and uses his phone. That's an infraction for the foreign object. The wiki gives him another one for the use of the cell phone besides just bringing it. But I feel like that applies more to weapons. That is, bringing one is a penalty for intent to cheat, and using it against your opponent is another, as you're actually cheating. There's no such distinction for electronics such as phones. Bumbles, for example, pinned only 1 infraction for Disco Kid's headphones, and for Macho Man's camera, and they were using them too. You could argue those happened in the corner while Thump's doing it mid-fight, but Bumbles also given a single infraction for Macho Man's glasses, which he brings into the ring and sometimes wears, and thus uses. So I'll do the same here. Next, for his presidential fight entrance theatrics, he jumps out of a helicopter and smashes Jab's mother to bits. Look, I know that the fight technically hasn't started yet, but that's literal manslaughter. Couldn't he have landed just a bit to the side? I really hope she survived that. Speaking of fight intros, on his non-presidential bouts one, he gets his browsing interrupted by the press that warns him the fight's about to begin. That violates rules regarding press distance from the ring, which dictate they must be only on specific sides of it, and within a certain distance. To end it off, during quarter breaks, some women are in the ring with him, and that can't be a thing as only the fighters and the ref are allowed inside. And so, the big final boss gets 16 infractions. Next, we're taking a trip overseas from the US to check out 3 men who have taken advantage of the fact that said country forgot to limit the presidential election by boxing decision to American citizens, and so came in for the presidential crown. Coming from the US's neighbor, Justin Turbo is the first of them we'll be looking at. Let's not waste any time. He's 48, 8 years past 40. About his attire, unlike most people we've covered so far, it's fair game, really. Well, except for those socks. The wiki gives an infraction for each of the 4 socks, but technically the ones he wears on his foot are not illegal. They're unnecessarily large and uncomfortable for a boxing match, yes, but not really illegal. Those on his hands, however, are unnecessary accessories. He wears multiple sock patterns throughout the fight, that is, different socks, but since they differ, again, just on the patterns, I'm willing to count all patterns as 1 infraction only. So that'd be 2 more infractions, 1 per sock on each arm of his. During quarter breaks, some things he says can be seen as disrespectful taunts, and so I'll mark an infraction for that too. Finally, he also brings a foreign weapon, or rather, weapons, in the form of a hockey stick and a lacrosse stick. He gets 2 infractions, 1 each, for bringing both into the ring, in other words, intent to cheat, and another 2 for using each, that is, for actually cheating. And so that's 4 more. Justin Turbo has 8 infractions. Pretty good compared to the rest. Next is North Korea's Kim Jong-un, and seeing as he has missiles on his presidential fight portrait, I think you know what to expect. He's our last contestant not to break the age limit rule, so that's good for him. He's also mostly fine on clothing, except for that forbidden collared shirt. Something that is just stupid is that he never, and I mean never ever punches you. He attacks you with a body slam if you miss the juggle, which not only isn't punching but is also a jump attack. Oh yeah, he also fires freaking missiles at you. He's literally trying to kill you. Not that the others weren't, but this is on another level. Hedget's an infraction for bringing that foreign, mass destruction weapon into the ring, and another one for using it. Side note, like Crenshaw's cannonballs, the player can not only tank the missiles, but deflect them too. Next is Hal, both on his body slam, and when he falls back on the floor after you miss a punch, he doesn't fall on his feet, and so he'd be ruled down by the referee. Thus, he gets 2 more penalties, one for each of those 2 cases. Lastly, the wiki mentions how he turns his back to the player when setting up the missiles, referring to this situation here, and that would be a no-no, because it could be seen as throwing/prolonging the fight. Now, whether his back is facing you or just his side is, that's up to interpretation, but I'm willing to let him go infraction-free on that one. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. One more thing is this unicorn that shows up on his corner during breaks. It is seemingly outside of the ring, however, with it only extending its head inside, so no new infraction here. And so, KJB gets 6 infractions added to his name. One of them definitely being more impactful than the rest, that's for certain. Our final foreigner here is Vladimir Putin, coming from Russia to liberate America from itself, and he brought his pet bear Dmitry with him. He is 68 years old, 28 years past 40. That jacket he's wearing isn't allowed. Same with that tie. In his presidential fight, he takes off his shirt, revealing an illegal belt underneath. No. He wears suit pants, which extend below his knees and are tucked into his boots. Speaking of the boots, those are military ones, which he can't wear. He has 2 attacks where he uses his foot, a kick and a stomp. For his presidential fight, Vladimir tag teams with the aforementioned bear, and he can't do that. Once again, like Bernie Sanders' birds, the bear clearly gave consent, so there's no animal cruelty involved. Some stuff he says during corner breaks can be seen as disrespectful and unsportsmanlike taunts. The wiki points out how he turns his back to the player when uppercutting, which, like with Kim Jong-un, could be seen as throwing or prolonging the fight. But come on, that's like, very brief, and just part of his body movement when punching. I mean, by that logic, we'd have to get Little Mac for briefly turning his back to the opponent during his 1-star and 2-star punches too. And so I'll let it slide for Putin. What I can't overlook, however, is how that uppercut is a jump attack, which is illegal. And we can also go ahead and actually get Lil Mac for this one too, because he jumps when performing his 3-star punch. But let's not get too off topic here. Anyway, remember how Kim Jong-un launches missiles at you? Well, what if I told you Putin nukes the ring? No, seriously. If the fight drags on until the end of round 5, he just pulls out a nuclear device and blows the nation up, with the ring being the epicenter of the explosion. That's even enough for a unique decision referencing real-world history, but it might as well have said, you all died. Well, this infraction will be delivered like all the other similar ones. He brings into the ring a nuke, which is a foreign weapon, and an activation device, which is a foreign object. That's 1 infraction for each, also falling under the intent to cheat part. And then 2 more infractions, 1 each when he actually uses both, activating the device to bring forth the nuke, which is the actually cheating part. That gives 15 infractions to Vladimir's name. And I know some of you are gonna ask me for this, but as Dmitry the Bear fights too, how many infractions does he have? Well, first, you might be inclined to say that he has no boxing license and has not shown up for weigh-in, and somehow, you'd be wrong, as he has data. I mean, it mostly uses the American way of measuring things without the metric system, but it still works, I guess. So he's fine on that part. The problems begin with the following. He's not only not wearing boxing shorts with the required line of demarcation and whatnot, he's not wearing one at all. We never really see his feet, or rather, back paws, but I'm pretty sure he isn't wearing any boots either. And he is not wearing boxing gloves. Oh, and yeah, to no one's surprise, all his moves are illegal. He strikes you with the palm of his paw both from the side and as an overhead. Added to those are a headbutt and a bite. I mean, if Tyson could bite someone's ear off, then imagine an actual bear. Anyway, next is how his headbutt reveals his back paws are outside of the ring. That is a huge no-no. Lastly, I wanted to point out how a bear year is roughly equivalent to 2 human years, and so by being 15 years old, Dimitri's age would be around the same as a human's 30, so he isn't too young to box. I mean, it's a bear. What am I even talking about? And so Dimitri has 8 infractions to call his own. Well, guess I can't postpone it any longer, can I? For those who watched Bumbles' first video, you guys probably already have a pretty good idea of why I skipped her. At first, you fight her because she's trying to stop the donation campaign you're holding, but for her rematch, she fully embraces internet memes into her fighting, and that brings us some huge problems. Buckle up, y'all, things are gonna get wild. She is 70, 30 years past 40. She gets 2 infractions for head covering. One is for the headband, and the other is for the cap she wears in her presidential fight. She's wearing no glasses. She also wears earrings, which were supposed to be removed before the fight. That necklace is an unnecessary accessory. Both the jacket and coat she wears on her encounters are not allowed. Plus 2, that belt is also illegal. For the same reasons as with Crenshaw, that is, since the metal belt buckle is part of the belt, I won't be counting it as an extra infraction. She wears pants that go below her knees and, on her regular fight specifically, are tucked into her boots. Speaking of boots, she gets 2 more infractions. One for the calfskin boots, and the other for the sneakers worn on her presidential fight. And all that is only for the attire. We're far from done. Okay, so, akin to our soda guy, she brings coffee into the ring. These are the related infractions. She drinks it during corner breaks, and that is not allowed. You can only drink water. She also drinks it during the fight, which falls under the just explained rule about drinking it in the corner, so no double infraction on that matter. However, a new infraction is added for her bringing the coffee, that is, a foreign object, into the ring. The wiki says that Warren chucks coffee at the audience on 2 separate occasions, one after she finishes drinking it mid-fight, and the other during her non-presidential fight intro. That was something I myself also thought to be the case, but while editing this video, I noticed that those are wrong assumptions, because the coffee cup falls inside the ring here, not at the audience. Added to that, during the fight, she doesn't chuck the cup at the audience, she simply puts it away. It does fly over to the audience if you intercept it, but then it technically isn't her doing it. So Warren barely gets spared of 2 infractions here. Now we're done, right? No. Well, she has a weapon she attacks you with, a bow and arrow. Or rather, bow and arrows. And here's the worst part. In her regular fight, she just uses arrows with boxing gloves attached to them. But for her presidential fight, she just attaches whatever the heck she pleases to the arrows. And so, we have an infraction. For the bow. And one for each unique arrow, because each one brings a different outside, illegal object into the ring. I am referring to the boxing glove, the frog, the skate, the money bag, this hand holding money, the Tide Pods ripoff, Jab Bush's face, Donald Trump's face, the Doge dog, a cell phone, a rubber duck, this cat, a TNT, a butterfly with glasses, and an anvil. And thank goodness, these aren't these guys' actual faces, or else we'd be talking about decapitation here. You? Last but not least, one more infraction for the weapon usage, in accordance with the difference between intent to cheat and actually cheating. Well, actually there are 2 more. One of her punches is a jump attack. Plus, even though she lands off-screen during that attack, from her posture we can be sure she lands on her knees. Thus, she was supposed to be considered down, and 1 knockdown closer to a TKO. What's her total number of infractions, you ask? 33. 33. Besides the many faults with her attire, she brings so much stuff into the ring with her that cheating for her is an understatement. She humiliates our Irish Punch-Out cheaters champion, beating his score of 20 by 13 infractions. Congratulations, I guess. Since Bumble said on his video that Aaron Ryan might not just be banned for his cheating, but killed instead, I assume this will happen to Chief Warren then.
I'm going to kill you.
Oh no.
And then kill you again.
So, I bet many of you are expecting me to give the player character a gun for the fights to be more fair, like Bumbles did with Little Mac. But come on, not only does the player character already have plenty of cheating of their own, I'm pretty sure they can get around on their own. As we've seen, they're able to tank cannonballs and missiles to the face, as well as deflect said cannonballs and missiles back with a mere punch. And so, I think every fighter here is on pretty even ground, as each and every one of them has cheats aplenty. That's why I'll propose this solution to the problem instead.
Release the